Hi, this is Shira Rubinoff. I'm here with Hal Lonas. Hal, please introduce yourself to our audience. Tell them who you are and what you do.
Hi, Shira. Thanks for having me. I'm the Senior Vice President and CTO of the Small and Medium Business and Consumer Business Unit at OpenText, which is now the parent company of Webroot and Carbonite.
Oh, excellent. That's a mouthful.
Yeah, that's a mouthful.
And
a lot
I'm
of
sure
changes.
A lot of responsibility as well.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, a lot of changes. We had a nice conversation last year. Can you talk a little bit about what has changed for you in the organization in the past year?
Yeah, quite a bit. So Carbonite completed the acquisition of Webroot early last year in March.
Right.
And we started down a path of working on cyber resilience solutions. And what we mean by that is that we're combining the layers of security with the final safety net of backup and recovery. So when you bring those things together and make it easy for consumers and individuals and small businesses, we think of that as cyber resilience. And it's the ability to kind of absorb threats and problems, and recover quickly, whether you're a business or an individual.
Oh, interesting. And personally, with your manifestation within the company, can you talk a little bit about your changes there and what your responsibilities have been since all these changes has happened?
Yeah. So I went from being a CTO at Webroot
Right.
to being a Senior Vice President and CTO for Carbonite plus Webroot together. So
Wow.
taking on responsibility for the backup products as well as the security products.
Well, I think they all kind of meld with each other. So I think that's important that you have one person overseeing all of it. So I'm sure you're the right man for the job. So that's great.
Thanks.
So let's talk about HTTPS as we have in the past. Can you talk a little bit about the HTTPS challenge and
Yeah.
the challenges you're having or challenges people have or that SMBs have?
Yeah. The intent of HTTPS is to provide a secure communication channel between you on the browser
Right.
and between the website. And the problem is that although it's a secure connection and that data is all encrypted, it really sort of knocks out the visibility for the security gear that's in between you and the website.
Right.
And so that security gear is basically now blind to the traffic that's going on. So it kind of gives the bad guys a new place to hide within that traffic.
Sure. Well, that's an interesting way of defining it, and I think that's it's spot on there. And so how does Webroot actually solve for the challenge? Because, there's many challenges that come from that. What do you guys do to solve that?
So we bring to bear our Bright Cloud Threat Intelligence solution. So that's a Webroot product, Bright Cloud Threat Intelligence. And it has URL classification, file classification, Internet Protocol IP classification. And within that, we've got 10 years of experience. We have some of the most sophisticated cloud-based machine learning analysis, available anywhere. We've been at it for a long time in an operational sense. And now we have a new facility within Bright Cloud, a new product called domain scoring.
Okay.
And the domain score is a way that we can assess what's going on kind of at the domain level and provide an answer for HTTPS traffic.
And how important is that score?
It's super important because since the bad guys can hide malicious content within a benign site, in fact, we find 25% of malware sites are actually on a top-level benign site. So having an understanding of what's going on beneath the domain level and a score for that gives organizations a way to set policy and give security on that top-level site.
And accuracy of that score is, I'm sure, spot on.
It's absolutely critical that we get it right. So, if we cast a site as a false positive, if we make a mistake, it's going to affect business processes. Conversely, if we miss a site, if we say, oh, it's okay, and there's malware hiding there, then users get infected and it causes lots of problems that way. So we've got to be accurate.
And you guys have recently released a threat report. Is all this included in the threat report? What other things can you talk about that are within the threat report? And one more point to that, how does your threat report differ a little bit than others that have been released as well, specifically to Webroot?
Yeah. So let me talk about that first.
Please.
So I think our threat report is different because we have so much experience, so many operational products out there, and so much visibility into the internet. So, with 70 million endpoints out there, we see a ton of internet traffic. One of the interesting things that we see now, specifically related to HTTPS, is that users are spending 90% of their time on HTTPS sites. And that's gone up year after year after year. So, they're spending more time on these HTTPS sites. And yet, when you think about the invisibility of those to traditional security gear, it's kind of a frightening situation we're in. So, and there's just lots of information in the annual threat report that I think is worth looking at. Another one is that we've seen phishing attacks increase by 640% just year over year. So a six-fold increase in phishing attacks. So the bad guys are successful. They're doing human engineering on us. They're moving from sort of machine-based infections to how do I trick users into giving up their usernames and passwords?
Well,
It's a scary situation.
Sure, that also could lean itself towards the whole ransomware attacks, when instead of really targeting the organization themselves, they target individuals within the organization, making it personal, dealing back to the human factors of it. And I talked a little bit before with Eric, we talked about how you're able to trick somebody, almost like a phishing attack or a spear phishing attack, but more insular and dealing with the human. And when you're dealing with human nature, people are, it's something personal. They have to deal with it quickly. We're not stopping to pause and think. So what would you talk to that point and how you would be able to curtail those issues going on, because they're coming hard and fast?
Yeah, that's so true. And spear phishing, we're seeing that more and more where, you and I get a targeted attack from maybe our boss, what appears to be our boss. It's a very, urgent request for help, maybe even over the weekend.
Help now.
Yeah, transfer this money.
My plane's taking off. Take care of this quickly.
Yeah.
You're the person I trust. You have the passwords. Get it done. By the time I land, I want to know it's taken care of, correct?
That's right. Or I forgot my password. Can I possibly use your username and password to access the system?
Could you log me in?
Can you log me in? Perfect. Yeah, that's right. And so we see these requests coming. They're spear phishing. We give up our credentials, and then the bad guy's in. The way we can stop that, actually, even if that attack's coming in, for one thing, we can train the individual. So we can say, security awareness training and recurrent training at a frequent basis. Having that kind of top of mind awareness of what's going on. Secondly is, even if you're tricked into clicking on the bad link, we have a real-time anti-phishing component that's in our endpoint security. So we actually see that request come in for a username and password. We could stop it there. That's right.
And that's a big differentiator as well. It's not just the training.
Yeah.
Well, one of the big things I do talk about is cyber hygiene within the organization. And the 4 things are continuous training within the organization, global awareness, security and patching, and zero trust. But when you target it and you're able to stop that, and even if you have the training, things do get through. So you're able to stop that, and that's a big deal.
That's right. We've always talked about security in layers, right?
Yeah.
Everywhere from the human element, training people up front, to what goes on in the network.
Sure.
And then at the very end, I think, getting back to cyber resilience, even if an attack lands on your endpoint, we can stop it there. But, even at the end of the day, if everything misses, having that backup ready to go and able to restore your business quickly and get you back up and running is just critical.
Well, we also talk about having a backup, and then you're completely cyber resilient to ransomware. Oh, we have backups and we're off-premise, and I spoke a little bit about that previously in our last podcast, but I'd like to hear your perspective on that. Why isn't a backup that's stored off-premise enough for organizations to use and say, you know what, we don't care if we get a ransomware attack, we can be up and running immediately?
Why isn't it enough?
Yes.
Yeah. So you actually want to attack it at every layer, right? I mean, if you can avoid the attack up front, great, you should do that. And so I think, stopping it at every layer, train the user, stop it at the network layer, stop it at the endpoint layer. Yeah, if you have to get your backup back and get it up and running from there, okay, but we want to stop it as soon as possible and at every possible sort of junction.
Well, I think that's a very critical piece you said, being proactive as well as reactive. We see a lot of companies playing catch up. Okay, don't worry, we'll protect you if this happens. If this happens, this is what you do. And you're saying, don't worry, we'll protect you if it happens, but here, we're going to also be proactive around it not happening too. You have to have both layers together in order to be properly secure.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think, if you're a company, and to be a little bit cynical, if you only have one tool, then you're going to emphasize that, just that one thing.
Correct.
And for us, having this spectrum of capability, we really want to emphasize all the layers and all the capability and say, employ all these things to protect yourself. It's all equally important.
Very important.
Yeah.
And I want to touch back on one thing you mentioned, which was the domain safety score. Can you talk a little bit about the specifics of it? Just explain it more to our audience so they really understand how this works and why it's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually assess thousands of factors. Going back in 10 years of history, we look at, incredible amounts of data, and we say, crunching all that together, we come up with a score of from 1 to 100, indicating how safe or how risky it is to go visit that site.
Yeah.
And remember, what we're doing also is looking at all the content that's underneath the top level, so that even if you only have to assess based on the initial connection at that top level, you really have a sense of what might be lurking sort of beneath the waterline, if you will. So, if a score is 1, absolutely, you wouldn't want to go there ever, right? You wouldn't want to touch that domain. If it's 100, you can be pretty sure it's a very safe domain, and we've never seen any problem with it. And you can be, like very confident in visiting that site.
Sure.
Scores in between, we leave it up to organizations.
The gray area.
Yeah, and you can kind of set your own risk or threshold level of what you're willing to take. But we take 70 as a pretty good sort of watershed level of, if it's above 70, probably pretty safe. If it's below 70, I wouldn't go there.
Understood. Well, thank you so much for your time. And this is a wealth of information, and love to hear that all the things that you've been doing in the last year. I look forward to hearing a lot more from Webroot.
Thank you, Shira. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Pleasure as always.